And my only announcement this week is that we will be off again next week. But I think that should be it for a little while. Other than that, anything from you, Sam or Mike? I can send out, well, I guess it's up to Mike if you want me to send out the key to everybody or wait until you do a draft too.
No, that's fine. You can send it out.
It puts the as with all of us, it puts the fire, right, that people are looking at it and commenting to finish it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen, but Mike, maybe you could talk a little bit about what is getting sent to people, your new mail key and caveat.
Okay. So we're ready to go? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. I think you're all getting a copy of this Eastern U.S. Osmia mail key that is unfinished. This is just the first draft, so it still needs some work, but it's, I'd say, 2/3 of the way done, and so I thought it'd be useful today. And
Tim, make that larger. I'm sorry to interrupt, but nobody
knows. Okay.
And also click the enable editing in the top. That's distracting.
All right.
Thank you.
So with Osmia mails, and this is true with a lot of VGen, of course, the characters that we use to separate them or identify them are pretty much totally different than the characters we use for females. So it's like learning another language. And notoriously, the males are a challenge for a couple reasons. Often when they die, they curl up into a little ball, and it becomes hard to see the underside of the abdomen, the sternites, which sooner or later you need to look at for most of the species to be sure of identification. So sternites are important. The T7 and T6 are important. There's a little tooth or callus on the inner side of the hind basotarsus that can be useful. These are all pretty different features, obviously, than the female. So I think we'll probably get to some of those.
Yeah. I have on deck a conjuncta male showing the lobed, the lobes on the, subfasciata, showing the lobes along the rim, so we can go right to that. So we'll just use your guide as the pathway to talk about a lot of different things. These all occur in slightly different format in Discover Life 2, and we both use each other's ideas to expand our own particular guides. So if you want, you could go through your first couple there, T2 and 3, and talk about that, and I'll flip over to the screen with subfasciata showing what Mike is going to talk about, which is this lobe right there. And we'll change the focus just to give people some orientation here. So here's the abdomen. This is T7. This is T6 here. And this is the rim or the margin here. Normally it would be curved through there, but here's that big thing, which sometimes I overlook. And initially, like, this doesn't look right. And then I realized, oh, I didn't look far enough to the sides. So, Mike, if you want to.
Right. So Sam has subfasciata on the screen. The other common species is conjuncta, and they both share that densely punctate and closely punctate tergites, and that's something that's an important thing to look at. But the main character is T7, and how it's those lobes. They're rounded and obtuse in subfasciata, which you kind of see there, and then more sharply acute in conjuncta. So they're very similar. And in general, those things are visible without special preparation. But for a lot of male osmia, if you can take the time to expose parts and make sure the sternites are visible, et cetera, it'll save you headaches.
Yeah.
So this one, subfasciata, is rare in the Midwest. I mean, we only have a few, relatively few records. Conjuncta is the common one.
They're both uncommon here. I actually weirdly see subfasciata more often seemingly in urban areas and or even suburban or slightly disturbed areas. And every once in a while, conjuncta shows up. Isn't conjuncta a snail shell user?
It is. I was going to mention that. It is, and it's obligate as far as I can tell. Conjuncta has never been found in trap nests or artificial nesting substrates that people put out, despite the numerous publications. And I've always found it in snail shells. I've put out snail shells, and they use them. I've got some here, and it's just it's unusual in the eastern U.S., but worldwide there are a lot of bees and some wasps also that use snail shells as a nesting substrate. It's pretty.
A new conservation program.
Mike, are they using discarded shells or are they attacking?
That's good. That's a very good point.
Jive with their peacekeeping.
Yeah, no, they are using abandoned snail shells, and that really limits their distribution. I've never found conjuncta in an urban area, and I'm in a big urban area, like Detroit or St. Louis or Chicago, but in calcareous woodlands that's where you generally find snails. It can be abundant, and it uses a lot of different things, a lot of different pollen sources, as far as we know. Cool bee.
Very cool. And Sam, is that conjuncta that you have up there?
I don't have any conjuncta.
Okay.
This is subfasciata. I'm just flipping this one over. You don't really need to. I'm just seeing if the lobes show up better down here. We'll see. We'll talk about under the architecture underneath with others.
Yes.
So maybe we'll just skip because you have a super go-to character. Is this a double rims one too, by any chance?
It is, and that's rarely mentioned, but I wasn't going to mention that until we got to that group. But
we're just gonna, because it's here, and we'll just show it, and it's for a lot of people, it's a real problem. And we won't necessarily spend tons of time on this specimen. Let me, I'm going to lighten up the picture here.
Okay.
Back to show it better. But this is one that took a while for me to figure out. I didn't have anyone showing me this, and I forget so people call it different things, and it's just like, what are they talking about? If you don't have something like this. Let's see if we can get it.
Yeah. So what Sam's trying to show is the very narrow edge, the ultimate edge of the fourth sternite, S4. And in Diceratosmia, and then also in the group that includes Texana and Gilibia and Droege, the very edge of sternite 4 is grooved, and that groove is shiny, and that groove is bordered by these little tiny pair of carina that mostly parallel that groove along the apical margin for the most part. And we'll see later those grooves disappear medially, but laterally they're pretty obvious. But you have to have some pretty good magnification and clean specimens relatively, and often, the abdomen may be turned in such a way that's hard to see. But
I describe this as looking at the edge of a Ziploc bag. So there's the two pieces of plastic, but it's a groove is a good one. Multiple descriptions are useful just because it's so odd of a character that people don't really have a native understanding of what we're looking at. But this is a good example.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So you can see that shiny groove and then bordered by two very close approximate carina.
Additionally, every once in a while, you'll, like within Discover Life guides, you will maybe have miss the lobe, but you catch this, and then it drops it down to this small subset of species that do have this.
Think we lost him?
Oh,
That
yeah.
might have been it. Okay. Well, Mike, let's see if I can share my screen. How do you want to proceed? Do you just want to kind of all be on pause for a minute, seeing if Sam's connection comes back, or would you like to try to describe stuff?
Yeah, I'll spend a couple minutes here. The very first couplet separates conjuncta and subfasciata from everything else because of T6. I mentioned T7 before, but I meant T6. T6 and all the other Osmia in the eastern U.S. is evenly curved. It doesn't have a lateral lobe or lateral teeth. It occasionally has a median notch, but laterally it's very smooth and gently curved without any teeth or lobes. Only conjuncta and subfasciata, and then another species, conjunctoides in Florida, have that. So that's a pretty unique feature and separates that group from everything else.
Great. I have a question from the chat that I think we could use for a moment. Amanda Dillon, I am sure this was said and missed it, but I have been leaving my male Osmia as species given that the keys aren't complete. What are others doing? Should I go with what I find if I can key them out? I just always thought if we didn't know what set them apart, then how could we be sure it wasn't something else?
Well, my key will be done shortly, and I mean, it doesn't have illustrations, but you can use it in conjunction with Discover Life illustrations or images, and I'll be happy to send it to anybody who wants it. The existing keys, Sandhouse and Mitchell, and even Discover Life, are missing some species that are newly created or newly found, or however you want to explain it. And some of those that are far northern, like Paradisica and some of the black Osmia, haven't been recorded from the U.S. proper yet, but they are known from Quebec or Ontario or some of the other Canadian provinces, and may be in Maine, New York, or Pennsylvania. Who knows? So I don't know if that answers your question, but I'd be happy to share this when it's finished. It'll be done in another week, I hope. And that's just the first draft. But it's people like you that use it, make it better. So I would be very interested in getting it to anybody who's wants to tackle the group.
Yeah. We I already sent it out, so it's just on the same email thread of the invitation today. But we have some moments to eat up here. So if anybody wants to continue that conversation or have some just like chatting things, you can unmute or get on video.
One thing
Yeah.
we just briefly touched on is when you're pinning Osmia, if it's at all, I mentioned this before, but if you can stretch out or pull out the abdomen carefully, I know this is tough if things have been in alcohol, that it will expose those sternites more fully, and at least for a lot of the species, that becomes critical. To feel confident of some of the IDs of things like distincta and atraventris, things that are easily confused otherwise, seeing those sternites, particularly S3 and S4, it really becomes, you'll sleep better, basically. So, but I know it's hard to, it takes time and it's hard to do, but boy, if you have a lot of Osmia, it's males. I try to do it as much as you can.
Would you mind describe, like, I know it's hard to describe, but saying a little bit about how you physically manage that?
Well, what I do, I hold them. I put them under the scope in my left hand, and I hold them, and I take a pin, usually a size 2 thereabouts, and very carefully under low magnification, put the pin between T7 and the sternite. Basically, stick it in the hind end, and very carefully and gently and slowly, kind of try to pull things apart. And you have to be very slow and careful. And the reason I do it under the scope is so you can see if it's too, if it should stop. So when they're freshly collected, that's fairly easy to do because they're still pliable. And if you put them in a relaxer, if they're dry for 24 or 48 hours, you can do it. But if they come out of alcohol, if they've been in alcohol for a couple of years, it's much more of a challenge. It can still be done. It's just a little trickier. So, and then even when they're on a pin, you can still hold them and take the pin pointed part of the pin and very carefully pull stuff out. And you don't have to pull stuff out so every single bit of the sternites are visible, just enough so that you can see the characteristics of particularly S3 and S4. And if Sam comes back, I think we'll probably show some of those, but those are critical things. And some of you have
if you pin them first, or do you hold them in your fingers while you're?
I do both.
Yeah.
It's if they're on a pin, it's a little more difficult. But but sometimes you don't have a choice. If you're looking at pin stuff, you got to deal with it. But it's best if you just right out of the field. When you're pinning, just take them and stretch that out, and to some extent it may accordion back together, but not completely. So.
Well, Laurel put some things in the chat on a different note, sharing Osmia counts from 2012, 2014 field work in central, east, and northern Texas prairies. Not published data, so maybe close hold or keep that in mind. JHA Lab members have published this as part of their own studies. And she has a link there. Laurel, did you want to say any more or just sharing that with the group in the chat?
Hi there. Thank you. No, I just wanted to share that because you mentioned that subfasciata was so uncommon that conjuncta is more common in your area. And this just jumped out at me, and I thought, well, subfasciata is pretty common in Texas. But this is quick analysis. That table I put up there is not a published table. Some of this data can be found in the publications from the Shalini Jha's lab. I just wanted to add that to your conversation.
Yeah, great. Yeah, you're right about subfasciata in Texas. I have gobs of specimens from down there, and I'm just amazed how common it can be. And also Oklahoma, it's common in at least the southern half of Oklahoma. And it doesn't use snail shells. That's kind of the interesting thing. I mean, conjuncta, even though the conjuncta and subfasciata look very much alike in just about every way, except T7, but in terms of their biologies, they're completely different. Subfasciata is very common in trap nests and artificial cavities and natural cavities. I'm not aware there's ever used snail shells, but conjuncta is the complete opposite. It's kind of an interesting comparison.
Very cool. Well, it's been almost 10 minutes-ish, 5-10 minutes. So in the interest of not having a microscope and that being the objective of the class, I'm going to call it for this afternoon, unfortunately. Laurel also showed the table. I guess if you can see her table, then you can see the chat. But by the way, the table I posted is bees that were netted on plants, not in trap nests. So listed subfasciata, conjuncta, texana, georgica in decreasing commonness. Joan, please post the mail key here as well. Unfortunately, I don't seem to be able to add attachments to the chats for these. think because it's not all DOI attendees, but it'll be, I sent it in the email of the reminder about class today. I sent another email with that, and it'll also be posted on the team site. So in our little folder in keys here.
And any comments, suggestions, additions, feel free to let me email and let me know. That's the only way these things get better. So.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Claire.
Yep, we'll be back in 2 weeks. We won't be here next week if anyone missed that, but hopefully you can join us in June.
Okay. See ya.
Thanks, everyone.